Hello. Okay, proceedings are about to begin. Let me introduce our panelists in today's talk on the confluence of influence in the industry. Here's Lisa Tant, publisher of Hello Canada, formerly editor of Flair. This is Byron, president of the Want Agency. Hi, Denis Gagnon, I'm sure you know from Montreal, fashion designer, eyeglasses legend. Hi, this is Patrik Ervell, designer of menswear and women's wear from New York. This is also Denis, how do you say your last name? Denis, okay. J.W. Anderson, recognizable by his refusal to wear Patrik Ervell's shoes, and designer from London, UK. So we're talking about fashion editors, stylists, celebrities, and how those can be the same thing for some people, how they interact, and who sort of has the power. We talk a lot about the democratization of fashion, and of course we're all sitting in a great example of it. But democracy doesn't mean that we all share power equally. There are still some people who hold far greater influence than others. I'd like to direct the first question to Patrik, who has actually held 3 of these roles. You were first a stylist.
I worked at a magazine, so I was associate editor of V magazine right after college, where I styled shoots, and then I also worked with some advertising clients as a stylist, and then stopped doing that and became a designer.
The transition from stylist to designer has actually become more common. There are some designers who are great designers and who I won't name, but whose job it is, or whose design seems more like styling, like remixing references and patterns than it does like original design. How do you sort of, coming from a background where you knew what the trends were, you knew what the market demands were, how do you sort of like clear your head of all of that and come up with your own ideas?
I mean, I think that was sort of central to my project, at least, was to have something very concise and very specific, and to really make a concerted effort to not make any of those references, and to not, I think you used the word remixing, to not do that. And to really come up with something that was a brand-based aesthetic, not an aesthetic based on styling.
Interesting that you said brand and not designer, because designers are now becoming their own brands, much as we all are with social media, the internet at large. There's a lot of talk about people being their own brands. How true is this, even for Lisa, for example? Editors used to be behind the magazine, and now they're often in front of it. There are editors who are much more widely clicked on than maybe any stories that they write or any editorials they direct. Can you maybe talk a bit about how that happened? It certainly would have happened over your time at Flair, and what you made of all of it.
You know, I think social media is so important because it really puts the voice in the hands of the reader, in the voice of the person who is buying your product, who it's created for. You know, when I first started on Twitter, I thought it was a really strange kind of idea, and I didn't get why people would care what I was doing, and quite frankly, why I'd care what they were doing. But it was amazing how quickly it became an instant focus group for me. You know, so I could float an idea out about somebody I wanted to shoot for the cover, or just put something out there and get an instant feedback. And it was a great way to network. And so I work with my teams of editors on creating their own personal brands that reflect them, but also that reflect the magazine really clearly, because we all have a voice now, and I find that incredibly exciting.
JW, you are a young designer. You are coming of age as a designer in a world where it is almost necessary to dress celebrities or to dress somebody who will be photographed at a party, on a red carpet. How early did you feel that pressure, and how do you make decisions about whom to dress, whom not to dress?
I think it's kind of an organic process, I find, with celebrity. Initially, I came from a background working at a brand like Prada, where that wasn't a major focus 10 years ago. And now it's the biggest focus of all, because, you know, as humans associate and want to be or aspire to be certain individuals.
Denis, you are the editor of a magazine. You've been the editor of a magazine for some time. Celebrities have also changed fashion magazines, not only in terms of who's on the cover, but in terms of who's an icon, who defines the style. But do celebrities really start trends, or do they just embody them?
I think it's a mix, you know. Like the designer, they're there pour proposer un vêtement, et puis bon, les personnalités vont interpréter ce vêtement-là, puis à la fin, les gens vont vouloir être habillés comme la personnalité, et puis bon, ça va créer un buzz pour le designer, pour l'actrice, pour le magazine, si les photos apparaissent dans un magazine.
You're nodding your head. Do you want to add to that? Or
Yeah,
subtract?
I think that the idea of celebrity and star system is that in one way it's easy to say it's the celebrity themselves, but I think that it's the magnifying effect of the news media that is what I think creates, because a celebrity, of course they do it in a certain degree on their own when they're walking around the streets in LA, but it's the thousands or hundreds of thousands of tweets of them wearing it or being featured in People magazine or something to that effect that makes Rihanna wearing a baseball cap like an effect that reaches a larger audience. So yeah, celebrity is important. I think that for me, when I look at this, I think that there's all sorts of forms of celebrity now as well too. I don't think it's only limited to the musicians and the Hollywood actors and actresses. I think that in many cases, some of the people that are being most followed in our domain, anyways, that I see, are either the photographers in some cases taking those pictures or the people that the photographers are shooting.
Celebrity has become a thing that exists for its own sake often, and it's interesting to watch the transference back and forth. I was reading a thing about opening ceremony the other day, and when they started, Chloe Sevigny she began designing with them and wearing their stuff early on, and she kind of helped make them famous. But now opening ceremony is sort of keeping Chloe Sevigny famous. So it's interesting that it's not like a trickle-down thing anymore, and it's the same with street style bloggers becoming stars. It circulates. It's hard to say where it starts, a trend anymore. Lisa, what do you think?
I think the trends come from all over the place, but primarily they come from the street. They come from pop culture. They come from Kate Middleton. They come from Kate Moss. They come from whatever we're sharing in social media. It's coming from all over the place, and it's creating such a vibrant, eclectic potpourri for fashion. I don't think fashion has ever had a better time.
I think as a designer, when you design something, you make it and you put it out into the world, and it goes on style.com and it's reproduced as images online and then worn in that short period of time. I feel it's become very sterile in a weird way, because I think it's become repetitive, because I feel that by the time a show is done, we're bored. By the time that we do something, the media speeds it up so fast. So, by the time the show is finished, the celebrity's wearing it. It's not even in the stores. No one else can buy it. And there's a detachment from the reality of sales, the celebrity, and the trend, because it's so high speed. You can't actually buy the reality, because it's, as fashion unfortunately sometimes provokes, is an elitist group of something that can't actually be purchased until 6 months later. I feel that we're at this kind of crossroad of like, do we socialize naturally anymore? Do we go to a museum? Do we know the person? Do we have friends that are real friends? Is there a reality? And I think that ultimately makes trends stagnated, so everything looks the same.
Mais en même temps, je trouve aussi que des tendances, il n'y en a plus, en fait. Tout le monde, tous les designers essaient de faire leur propre tendance, essaient de faire leur propre identité. Et d'ailleurs, c'est pour ça aussi, comme des grosses compagnies qui font de la masse, je sais pas, moi je peux pas nommer la grosse compagnie, mais leur plus grande difficulté, c'est de faire quelle tendance qu'on va faire cette année, où on va vendre, parce que tu as toutes les tendances maintenant. C'est ça que je trouve le fun aussi, parce que il y a plus d'identité, il y a plusieurs tendances.
it's difficult to say when a trend begins, but I think a mark of influence is being able to say when a trend is over. I think that's still what separates the fashion elite, is their ability to decide when something is just out. But that acceleration is partly also due to celebrity. You know, they're wearing, it's not even like your clothes going up on style.com an hour later. It's like a celebrity wearing a design to your show and sitting there an hour before the show begins, effectively rendering it over in some way before it starts. How do you deal with that speed? How do you try to control your business or your brand at that speed?
I mean, I've always felt like at a certain point, trends and communicating trends in the media and in social media, eventually it just becomes background noise and almost pollution. So as a designer, you sort of, your goal should be to build a brand, really. It should, once you have something that people recognize as a brand, that exists sort of outside of seasons, outside of trends, then I mean then you have something. Then you have something real that's tangible, that that doesn't sort of vacillate with the market, with trends.
What do you think is the most influential brand?
I don't see
It's hard to say,
one.
yeah.
I think there's so many that have an influence, whether it's Prada, whether it's Louis Vuitton. I think it's brand you. You know, I don't buy into the whole trend thing. I wear something because I like it, because it's me and I express myself. And I think we're seeing that more and more. There's so many different styles and people are encouraged to be themselves. And that to me is the most interesting thing. So I don't get hung up on trends, and overall, sure, I'm interested in it, but I don't think that's the point anymore. I don't think that's the story.
It's a loaded question. When you said it, my first thought was Apple. So I mean, we're here talking about fashion, but I think it's the most influential brand that of our generation. My personal view. I've always been fascinated with a brand. It's a little bit like what Patrik was talking about before. A brand that I could have an iPhone. It's as coveted by me as it could be by my mother. It's one product. Their full SKU of products is probably less than 15 items. And I think that it has appeal. I think that brand has realized that to put the utmost into design and quality, first and foremost, then you could capture a wide audience. And it's not about putting it into segments of geography or demographics. My second one, which is also kind of personal to me, because in fashion, which I had the great luxury to work with, we brought Acne to North America now 12 years ago. And I think, and I was also at a WGSN award with them last year when they won the most influential fashion brand in the world. And I think it is because they've redefined a new space as well, too. Because I think before, this idea of luxury meant you paid a lot of money for something, or this designer who's great and went to Central St. Martin's or whatever it might be, made this, and that was what the whole scope is. And unfortunately or fortunately, our industry is kind of set up that way because of PPR and LVMH and Gucci Group and the likes. But I think that young designers like these guys here, who have the capacity to build a brand, have a very, very strong point of view, which I think is the essential, and be able to be flexible to be able to do things, to get into magazine, to get into music. I'm working with a brand, Maison Kitsune, right now as well, too. I think that they have a wonderful luxury for that type of thing, too. So.
For fashion, that's a very difficult question because I don't believe that there is some sort of, there isn't a dominant thing that everyone takes their cues from. It doesn't exist anymore.
And it depends the season also.
Did it exist, or?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Did it? I don't know. Did it? Not in my time.
Not in our time.
Maybe
Winners write history,
before.
so.
So no. I think in fashion that I don't know. I can't say in fashion.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. I kind of feel that there is leader brands thinker brands maybe in fashion, and I feel that they kind of stimulate the industry. And I feel like there's designers that follow, and there's designers that lead within it. Like I do think someone like Ray from Comme des Garçons is probably one of, in my generation and probably over a lot of generations, that has inspired a lot of people. And I feel like it's the people that are willing to take the risk and maybe don't capitalize in the beginning en masse that are actually the people that kind of keep the industry stimulated, because ultimately it's clothing, it's not a computer, it's none of that, it has to be exciting.
Moi, si je veux juste ajouter, en fait, tous ces brands-là, c'est la force qu'ils ont, c'est qu'ils ont full cash. They're full of lot of money and they could do everything. You know, and doesn't matter if I don't sell this season, you know, because I have perfume, I have accessory, and I could make money with that, you know. And this season I could do everything like Comme des Garçons. You know, did you see the last season what they did? That's perfect, you know. But it's who's gonna wear it? Who's gonna buy it? Nobody's gonna buy it because they buy perfume and they buy accessory and something. That's why you make money with that, you know. If I do that, you know, and I could have so much fun.
Yeah.
C'est vrai, see?
I mean, it's sort of a double-edged sword for a small company. It's difficult, even though you might want to push further, it's difficult to do that because, you know, there are realities to...
Right, which, I mean, that's my question. Is it possible, will we see more designers? Will there be a next generation of like the Mucha, the Ray, so on? How will that happen in a much, much different climate where celebrity, mass collusion, capital are impossible to ignore?
It needs to happen. If it doesn't, then it's like when I have people join the company, I feel like everyone that's like has joined recently, everything that they go to reference or look at is on the internet. So they sit at their desk and they don't go anywhere. So if a collection, it kind of feels like anything that didn't go up online since 2000 doesn't exist. So I feel like if we don't have new thinkers in the industry, it won't progress. Like, and hopefully there is designers that come out of that. Do you mean like you would hope? But I feel like it is at a very dangerous point where it is about reference. It is not about an organic process. Do you mean? Yes, everything's been done before, but it's about how to progress that forward. If you mean, and I feel that if there isn't a next generation, then we are heading towards something which is not very stimulating. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But of course there will be. You know, that's human nature. There's human nature to be an innovator and be creative and be exciting. Of course, there always will be. I have absolute faith. I think I have a utopian view of fashion, I think.
I don't know. It's interesting because I used to always go to the library and look through books and things. And I recently went back to the school that I was at to go to the reference library, and it was a ghost town. It was like, and I do feel like actually going out and about and really touching and feeling and shopping and going to museums and finding new things, getting drunk on a night out, doing all these things are really important to be able to design. Really important to get drunk is what I'm trying to say. But you need to have life experience to be able to do
Which
that.
drug you take?
But it's sort of, I think you need that. And my question is, on all of that, is like, does social media block that? Mm-hmm. And I think
Social
that's
media encourages
it's another
it.
channel.
No, I actually think that he touched on a good point, and I mean, we're talking about fast fashion, we're talking about social media. It is so fast. I think that the period of reflection, I think, is what's lost. I think that when you're looking, if you're going to a library, and that idea of exploring something and taking a deeper dive into understanding whether it's an art piece that's on a wall or whether it's a garment of clothing, if we're just so wired to just see new all the time, you don't even have a second to think, do you like it? Did you get an emotional attachment to it? So I think that's what I'm most concerned about is at what points in our life do we now, and in our business, take a moment to just see, and I think Patrik said as well, is this good quality? Is this something is there a human connection to a product or an experience?
I feel like, as we were talking about this, time to think, I feel like we live in this reactionary world where you can have a blog and set it up and have your opinion, but it's sometimes I feel like there is no time. It's like you do a show or you do an editorial or you launch a new shoe or whatever. The reaction is like, now it's done. It's like, I hate it, I love it, or, you know, there's no kind of thought process, there is no kind of time to think. And I think that's just, in a weird way, destroys the process because there's no time to actually let it breathe. You know, it's like, I think sometimes the best collections are the ones that are hated first. Because they shouldn't make sense
art in
now.
general.
They should never make sense immediately because ultimately it has to go into the store in 3 months' time. But because of this kind of like, you know, the blog culture and the reactionary form of it, it kind of blocks that organic process to actually like something, like naturally let it breathe. And I think that's where we're at, you know.
I think you can't sell creativity short. There are always going to be people, always, who are firebrands and creative. And, you know, speaking from my perspective as a kid from Vancouver, my world was very, very small. Now you can be a kid in Medicine Hat, and your world is huge. It's the whole world. And you can experience virtually and then go and discover who you are on your own. You know, I think the web, social media, is the greatest, most amazing thing that has ever happened, and how it expands our horizons, and it gives us the opportunity to then go and choose what we want to experience. And it doesn't mean we're just going to discard things. It opens our mind. And you'll have some people who will be super fast and always on to the next thing, and other people who will embrace other sides of it. So I'm like, bring it on.
And on that note, do not forget to tweet your favorite things, or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Let's get this trending, and have a good night.
Thank you.